Hey everyone. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am, sharing my story with you all. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I thought my life was pretty much on track. I had a stable job, a nice home, and what I believed was a solid marriage to my wife, Anna, who's 25. But everything changed a couple of weeks ago. It all started when Anna accidentally left her second phone at home. Now, I didn't even know she had a second phone. It was lying on the kitchen counter, almost hidden under some papers. I only noticed it because it buzzed, catching my attention. I picked it up and saw a text notification from an unknown number. The message said, "I can't wait to see you tonight." My heart dropped. It felt like time stopped for a moment. Who the hell was this person? And why were they looking forward to seeing my wife? A million thoughts raced through my mind, but I tried to stay calm. I told myself it could be a misunderstanding. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe it was a friend. But deep down, I knew something was off. Anna had been acting strange for months, working late, going on trips that seemed too frequent, and getting mysterious calls she'd brush off with lame excuses. I tried to unlock the phone to see more, but it was password protected. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. I wanted to confront Anna right then and there, but she was at work. I had no choice but to wait. When lunchtime came, I drove to her office. I couldn't bear to wait until she came home. I needed answers. I walked into the building, my heart pounding, and asked to see her. She looked surprised to see me but smiled. That smile faded quickly when I showed her the phone and the text message. "Anna, what's this about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Her face turned pale, and she looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Where did you find that?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Does it matter? Who is this, Anna? Who are you meeting tonight?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and she covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Jake," she whispered. "I can explain." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She wasn't denying it. "Explain what? That you're cheating on me?" She broke down in tears, nodding. "Yes, but it's not what you think. It's complicated." "Complicated? You're having an affair, Anna. How's that complicated?" She confessed that she'd been seeing someone else for our entire marriage. Every word felt like a dagger. I was furious, devastated, and confused all at once. How could she do this to me? Why didn't I see the signs sooner? I told her I couldn't forgive her, that she'd broken my heart and my trust. She got angry, screamed that it wasn't all her fault, and stormed out. I went home, numb, and shortly after she came back, packed a suitcase and left. I didn't stop her. I couldn't. I just watched her go, feeling like my whole world was crumbling. The first few days after she left were the hardest. I was an emotional wreck. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and couldn't focus on anything. I kept replaying our entire relationship in my head, wondering what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. I felt worthless, like I was the reason she cheated. I turned to the internet for support, reading stories from others who had been through similar situations. The comments were a mix of empathy and advice, and they helped me feel a little less alone. I decided to take control of what I could. The first thing I did was change the locks on the house. I couldn't stand the thought of her coming back and walking in like nothing happened. Next, I contacted a divorce attorney and scheduled a meeting. I knew I needed to protect myself legally. It was a painful step, but necessary. I also took a picture of the incriminating text and sent it to her family. They needed to know the truth about what was happening. As if dealing with the affair wasn't enough, I found out that Anna had been telling her friends that I was the one cheating on her. It was like she was trying to shift the blame and make me look like the bad guy. I started getting nasty messages from people I thought were my friends, accusing me of things I didn't do. I deleted all the voicemails she left me. I couldn't bear to hear her voice. Each message felt like salt in the wound. I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to get tested for STDs. It was humiliating, but I needed to make sure I was okay. Through all this, my family and friends were my rock. They listened, offered advice, and helped me get through each day. The online community also played a huge role in my recovery. Strangers reaching out with their own stories and words of encouragement meant more than they could ever know. The day I changed the locks, I felt a small sense of control return. It was like a symbolic gesture of taking back my life. I had spent so long in the dark about Anna's double life that doing something concrete felt empowering. I called a locksmith, and within an hour, the locks were changed. I remember standing outside my house, new keys in hand, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. This was my home again, a place where I didn't have to worry about Anna walking in and out as she pleased. The divorce attorney I found was highly recommended online. During our first meeting, I brought the second phone and showed the attorney the incriminating text. She listened patiently as I explained the situation, offering me reassurance and practical advice. We discussed the various steps we would need to take, from filing for divorce to dividing assets. It was overwhelming, but having a professional guide me through the process made it seem manageable. In the midst of all this, I still had to go to work. Keeping up a semblance of normalcy was difficult. I remember sitting at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen, unable to concentrate. My colleagues noticed I wasn't myself. A few of them asked if I was okay, and I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak without breaking down. My boss, a kind woman in her late 50s, called me into her office one day. She told me she could see I was struggling and offered me some time off. I gratefully accepted. On my days off, I tried to keep busy. I took up running, hoping the physical exertion would help clear my mind. I jogged through the park, my thoughts racing faster than my legs. I'd replay conversations with Anna, trying to understand how we ended up here. I'd think about the future, wondering if I'd ever be able to trust someone again. The runs were exhausting, but they gave me a sense of purpose, something to do when the sadness threatened to overwhelm me. One night, I decided to go through our old photos. It was a painful but necessary step. I needed to confront the reality of our relationship, to see it for what it was rather than what I wished it had been. As I looked at pictures from our wedding, our vacations, and everyday moments, I felt a wave of mixed emotions. There were happy memories, yes, but also signs I had missed. Little things that, in hindsight, hinted at her infidelity. It was heartbreaking, but also clarifying. My friends rallied around me during this time. They'd drag me out of the house for beers, insisting I needed to get out and have some fun. We'd sit at our favorite bar, and they'd make me laugh, even when I didn't feel like it. Their support was invaluable. They reminded me of who I was outside of my marriage, of the person I could be again. One of my friends, Mike, went through a similar situation a few years back. His experience and advice were particularly comforting. He told me about the stages of grief he went through, assuring me that things would get better, even if it didn't feel that way right now. I also found solace in online communities. There's something about the anonymity of the internet that makes it easier to share your deepest pain. I posted my story on a few forums, and the responses were overwhelming. People from all over the world offered their support and advice. Some had been through similar experiences, while others just wanted to offer a kind word. Their empathy and understanding made a huge difference. I wasn't alone in this. Others had walked this path before me and come out the other side. One comment that stuck with me was from a woman who had been cheated on by her husband of 20 years. She wrote, "It's going to hurt like hell, but you will survive this. Focus on yourself. Take it one day at a time. And remember that you deserve to be happy." Her words became a mantra for me. Whenever I felt overwhelmed, I'd repeat them to myself, reminding myself that I could get through this. In the midst of all this emotional turmoil, practical matters needed attention. The house, our finances, and dividing our possessions were all daunting tasks. The house we lived in was bought together, and I had to figure out what to do with it. The attorney advised that I either buy out Anna's share or sell it and split the proceeds. I decided to keep the house. It was a place full of memories, both good and bad, but it was also a place where I could start anew. I refinanced the mortgage in my name, a tedious process, but it felt good to know that the house was truly mine now. The financial aspects were tricky. We had joint accounts, investments, and debts. Untangling our finances was a nightmare. I had to gather all our financial documents, make a list of assets and liabilities, and work with my attorney to ensure a fair division. Anna, surprisingly, was cooperative during this part. Perhaps she felt guilty, or maybe she just wanted to move on quickly. Either way, we managed to reach an agreement without too much conflict. Then came the division of our possessions. Going through our things was like reopening old wounds. Every item had a memory attached to it. The coffee mug she got me on our first anniversary, the throw pillows we picked out together, even the kitchen gadgets we bought on a whim. We decided to split everything equally, but it was still painful. I kept some things, let go of others, trying not to dwell too much on the memories they held. One of the hardest parts was dealing with the pets. We had 2 cats, Felix and Luna, who were like our children. We both loved them dearly, and deciding their fate was heartbreaking. After much discussion, we agreed that they would stay with me. Anna would visit occasionally, but they would primarily live with me. It was a small consolation in a sea of loss. Throughout this process, my support system was crucial. My parents, who lived a few hours away, were a constant source of comfort. They'd call daily, checking in on me, offering words of wisdom. My mom even came to stay with me for a week, helping me sort through my emotions and belongings. Having her there was a godsend. She'd cook meals, encourage me to talk about my feelings, and just be there when I needed a shoulder to cry on. As the weeks passed, I began to see a therapist. It was something I had been hesitant about at first, but I quickly realized how beneficial it was. Talking to a professional helped me process my emotions in a way I couldn't do on my own. My therapist, Dr. Morgan, was compassionate and insightful. She helped me understand that Anna's infidelity wasn't my fault, that I wasn't responsible for her actions. She also guided me through the stages of grief and helped me develop coping mechanisms to deal with the overwhelming emotions. One technique Dr. Morgan suggested was journaling. She encouraged me to write down my thoughts and feelings every day to give myself a space to express everything I was going through. At first it felt awkward, but over time it became a valuable outlet. I'd write about my anger, my sadness, my hopes, and my fears. Putting my emotions into words helped me make sense of them, and it was a way to track my progress. Another suggestion was to focus on self-care. During the marriage, I had neglected my own needs in many ways. Now it was time to prioritize myself. I started eating healthier, exercising regularly, and picking up hobbies I had let go of. I rediscovered my love for painting, something I hadn't done in years. Setting up a small studio in the spare bedroom, I began creating art again. It was therapeutic, a way to express myself without words. Socially, I started to branch out. I joined a local running club and met new people. It was refreshing to interact with others who didn't know about my past, who saw me for who I was now, rather than the man whose wife had cheated on him. These new friendships helped me regain a sense of normalcy, a life beyond the pain. The online support continued to be a lifeline. I became more active in forums, not just sharing my story, but also offering support to others. It felt good to help people going through similar situations, to give back some of the kindness I had received. The community became like a second family, a place where I could be honest and vulnerable without judgment. One night, while browsing through one of these forums, I stumbled upon a post about moving forward after betrayal. The author spoke about forgiveness, not for the person who hurt you, but for yourself. It resonated with me deeply. I realized that holding on to anger and resentment was only hurting me. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or condoning what Anna did, but it meant freeing myself from the grip of the past. It was easier said than done, but I started working on it. I practiced mindfulness and meditation, techniques Dr. Morgan had introduced me to. They helped me stay present, to focus on the here and now, rather than getting lost in thoughts of the past or worries about the future. Each day, I made a conscious effort to let go of a little more anger, a little more pain. The process was slow and often painful, but gradually, I began to feel lighter. The nights of lying awake, replaying every hurtful word and action, became less frequent. The days of feeling like a failure, like I wasn't enough, started to fade. I began to see myself not as a victim, but as a survivor, someone who had been through a lot but was still standing. 1 year after discovering Anna's affair, I found myself in a much better place. I had finalized the divorce, kept the house, and was continuing to work on myself. I had made new friends, rekindled old passions, and was beginning to look forward to the future. The pain hadn't disappeared completely, but it was no longer the defining feature of my life. Looking back, I could see how far I had come. The man who had found that text message on Anna's second phone was a different person from the one I was now. Stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. The journey had been arduous, but it had also been transformative. I'm sharing my story not just to vent or seek sympathy, but to offer hope to anyone going through something similar. Infidelity is devastating, but it doesn't have to define you. You can heal, you can move forward, and you can find happiness again. It takes time, support, and a lot of self-love, but it is possible. Thanks for reading, everyone. I'll keep you updated as things progress. And to anyone out there struggling, remember, you are not alone. You are stronger than you know, and you will get through this. Hey everyone, it's been a while since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been progressing. Life after discovering Anna's affair has been a roller coaster, but I'm slowly finding my footing and starting to move forward. After finalizing the divorce, I knew I needed to rebuild my life. One of the first things I did was take a trip I had always dreamed of, but never had the chance to do. I booked a solo vacation to the mountains, a place I always wanted to visit. It was both a physical and emotional journey, giving me the time and space to reflect and heal. The trip was transformative. Being surrounded by nature's beauty, away from the chaos of my everyday life, helped me gain perspective. I spent my days hiking, breathing in the fresh mountain air, and my nights by a cozy fireplace, journaling my thoughts. It was a time of introspection and clarity. I realized that I had spent so much energy focusing on the past and the pain that I had forgotten to live in the present. Returning home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects and responsibilities. My boss, who had been incredibly understanding throughout this ordeal, noticed the change in me. I was more focused, more driven. Work became a way to channel my energy productively. Socially, I continued to expand my horizons. The running club I joined became a regular part of my routine. I made new friends who shared my interests and encouraged me to keep pushing forward. We'd meet up for runs, grab coffee afterward, and just talk about life. These new connections were invaluable, providing a sense of normalcy and belonging. I also reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with over the years. One of them was my college buddy, Mark. We hadn't spoken in ages, but when he heard about what happened, he reached out. We met up for drinks, and it was like no time had passed. Mark had always been a great listener, and catching up with him reminded me of the importance of maintaining strong friendships. Therapy continued to play a crucial role in my recovery. Dr. Morgan helped me navigate the complexities of my emotions. We delved deeper into my feelings of betrayal and abandonment, working through the pain layer by layer. She introduced me to cognitive behavioral techniques to manage my anxiety and negative thoughts. It wasn't an overnight fix, but I started to notice improvements. The weight on my chest felt a little lighter. The constant knot in my stomach began to loosen. One day in therapy, we talked about forgiveness. Not just forgiving Anna, but forgiving myself. I had been carrying a lot of guilt and self-blame, questioning every decision I made in our marriage. Dr. Morgan helped me understand that holding on to this guilt was preventing me from moving on. I needed to forgive myself for not seeing the signs, for not being perfect. This realization was liberating. In addition to therapy, I continued my journaling practice. Writing became a daily ritual, a way to process my thoughts and track my progress. I wrote about my hopes, my fears, and my small victories. Looking back at my journal entries from the early days, I could see how much I had grown. The man who had been shattered by betrayal was slowly but surely piecing himself back together. One of the most significant steps in my recovery was letting go of the need for closure from Anna. Initially, I wanted answers. I wanted to understand why she did what she did. But as time passed, I realized that seeking closure from her would only keep me tied to the past. I needed to find my own closure within myself. Part of this process was reevaluating my boundaries and what I wanted in future relationships. I started to understand the importance of self-worth and not settling for less than I deserved. This wasn't about building walls, but about creating healthy boundaries to protect myself. The support I received from the online community continued to be a pillar of strength. I became more active in forums, not just sharing my story, but also offering advice and encouragement to others. Helping others navigate their pain was incredibly therapeutic. It gave my own experience a sense of purpose. Months passed, and life gradually returned to a new kind of normal. The pain of Anna's betrayal was still there, but it was no longer the focal point of my life. I started dating again, taking things slow, and being honest about my past. It wasn't easy, and I had moments of doubt and fear, but I reminded myself that I deserved happiness and love. One evening, while on a date, I found myself genuinely laughing and enjoying the moment. It was a simple dinner at a local restaurant, but it felt significant. I realized that I was capable of moving on, of finding joy and connection again. This date didn't turn into anything serious, but it was a milestone in my healing journey. I also focused on personal growth. I took up new hobbies, like photography and cooking. I enrolled in a cooking class, something I'd always wanted to do, but never found the time for. It was fun and fulfilling, giving me a sense of accomplishment and creativity. Reflecting on the past year, I can see how far I've come. The journey from betrayal to healing has been long and challenging, but it has also been transformative. I've learned so much about myself, about resilience, and about the power of support and community. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It might not seem like it now, but with time, support, and self-care, you will get through this. You are stronger than you realize, and you deserve happiness and peace. Thanks for being a part of my journey and for all the support. I'll continue to update you as I move forward. But for now, I'm focusing on living in the present and building a future that's full of hope and possibility. Stay strong, everyone. We're all in this together. But it is not the end. My brother has some story of his life. I am Joe, a 33-year-old man who recently went through one hell of a ride. This all started on Father's Day, and since then, my life's been turned upside down. My wife, Claire, who's 32, didn't come home from work on Father's Day. Now, Claire usually texts me if she's going to be late, but that night, there was nothing. I started getting worried and decided to start looking for her. About 2 hours after she was supposed to be home, I called her work. They told me she wasn't there, which only made my worry grow. So I got in my car and drove the route she usually takes to work, thinking maybe she'd had an accident or something crazy had happened. Her car wasn't at her workplace, so I drove the other route she could have taken home. I called the hospitals and the police, and even got her family involved because, to me, she was missing at this point. 4 hours after she was supposed to be home, I got a text from her that just said, "I'm alive." I called her right away, and when she picked up, she told me she was working late, which was clearly a lie. She also sent a Snapchat message to a group chat that included her sister, saying she was alive. This updated her location on the Snap map, showing she was at a park and ride about 15 minutes from our house. So, I drove there, and there she was, in the back of her coworker's car. When she noticed me, we talked, and the other man just hid in his car. I asked her if she loved him, and she said yes. I asked if she was planning to leave me, and she also said yes. Since then, she's been living with him, and only came back to our apartment the following Wednesday. We talked, and it seemed amicable. She said she would respond to my texts, and agreed to take care of some bills we had. She did send me car payments, but that's the last I've heard from her since Monday. I'm basically being ignored now. So, here I am, living in the apartment we've shared for the past 8 years, slowly trying to dig out of all our stuff. It's been really tough. I'm struggling, and it's been a hard experience for me. I just wanted to share this story to get others' perspectives on what my next move should be. I know divorce is obvious, but I'm not really sure how to move forward from this point. Any advice would be welcome. I know she did me dirty, and I should just be mad, but I miss her and hope she's okay. The days following that encounter at the park and ride were a blur. I was trying to make sense of everything that had happened. It felt like my entire world had collapsed, and I was left standing in the rubble, not knowing where to begin picking up the pieces. I spent a lot of time just sitting in the apartment, staring at nothing in particular. Memories of Claire and me flooded my mind. I remembered the day we moved in, full of hope and dreams for our future together. We had painted the walls ourselves, arguing playfully about the colors, and then collapsing on the couch, exhausted but happy. Those memories seemed like they were from another lifetime. The hardest part was the nights, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering where it all went wrong. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My mind was constantly racing with thoughts of Claire and her new life with this other man. Was she happier with him? Did she think about me at all? I felt a deep sense of betrayal, but underneath that was a lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd realize her mistake and come back. One evening, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The fresh air helped clear my head a bit. As I walked, I thought about the future. I knew I couldn't go on like this forever. I needed to take steps to rebuild my life, to find some sense of normalcy again. I reached out to a few friends, something I hadn't done in a long time. They were supportive, offering a listening ear and some much-needed distractions. We went out for drinks a couple of times, and it felt good to be around people who cared about me. They encouraged me to take care of myself and not let Claire's actions define my happiness. One of my friends, Mike, suggested I take up a new hobby. At first, I was hesitant. I've never been one to explore new things, especially in a time of crisis. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed something to occupy my mind and keep me busy. So I decided to start going to the gym. At first, it was just a way to burn off some of the restless energy that kept me up at night. But as the weeks went by, it became something more. The physical activity was therapeutic, helping me clear my mind and feel stronger. I set small goals for myself and celebrated each one I achieved. It was a way to rebuild my confidence, one step at a time. Meanwhile, Claire's silence continued. I tried not to dwell on it, but it was hard. Every time my phone buzzed, a part of me hoped it was her, ready to apologize and come back. But those messages never came. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life without her. I reconnected with old hobbies, like fishing and woodworking. They brought me a sense of peace and accomplishment. The apartment, once filled with memories of us, began to feel like my own space again. I rearranged the furniture, bought new curtains, and slowly, the place started to reflect my new reality. It was no longer the home we had built together, but a place where I could start anew. One day, as I was cleaning out the closet, I found an old photo album. Flipping through the pages, I saw pictures of Claire and me from happier times. Our wedding day, vacations, silly moments at home. It was bittersweet, but I didn't feel the sharp pain I once did. Instead, I felt a sense of closure. Those times were part of my past, but they didn't define my future. I decided to put the album away, not out of anger or sadness, but because I was ready to move forward. I wanted to create new memories, new experiences, and a new life that wasn't overshadowed by what had happened. It wasn't easy, and there were still tough days, but slowly, I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I realized that while Claire's betrayal had hurt me deeply, it didn't have to destroy me. I had the strength to rebuild, to find happiness again, and to move on. As I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace. The journey wasn't over, but I was on the right path. I had my friends, my hobbies, and a newfound sense of self. And for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. During this time, I also got closer to my neighbors. There was an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, who lived next door. They had always been friendly, but I never took the time to really get to know them. One day, Mrs. Thompson invited me over for dinner. It was a simple meal, but the company was comforting. They shared stories about their life together, the ups and downs they had faced. Listening to them gave me hope that maybe, one day, I too could find happiness again. Mrs. Thompson, seeing my interest in woodworking, introduced me to a local community group. They met every Saturday to work on projects and share techniques. Joining that group became a highlight of my week. I made new friends and learned new skills. It felt good to be part of a community, to have something to look forward to. Around the same time, I also got back into fishing. My dad had taught me how to fish when I was a kid, and it was something we used to do together often. After he passed away, I stopped going. But now, standing by the water, feeling the tug of a fish on the line, brought back fond memories and a sense of tranquility. Life was slowly starting to look up. I was taking care of myself, reconnecting with old passions and building new relationships. Claire was still in my thoughts, but she no longer held the power to devastate me. I was finding my own way, carving out a new path for myself. One evening, as I was packing up my fishing gear, I noticed a woman fishing a little way down the shore. She seemed familiar, but I couldn't place her. As I walked by, she looked up and smiled. It was an old high school friend, Laura. We started chatting, catching up on old times. She had moved back to town recently and was also going through a tough time, having lost her job due to company downsizing. We exchanged numbers and decided to meet up for coffee the next week. Laura's presence was a breath of fresh air. She was kind, funny, and understanding. We started spending more time together, and I found myself looking forward to our outings. It was nice to have someone to talk to who wasn't directly involved in my past with Claire. As the months went by, Laura and I grew closer. We shared our struggles, our hopes, and our dreams for the future. It wasn't a romantic relationship, at least not at first. It was more about two friends supporting each other through difficult times. But gradually those feelings started to change. One night, after a particularly great day of fishing, Laura and I sat by the fire, talking and laughing. The conversation grew quieter, more intimate. She looked at me, her eyes reflecting the firelight, and I felt a connection I hadn't felt in a long time. We kissed, and in that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could open my heart again. We took things slow. Neither of us wanted to rush into anything, but we both felt the potential for something special. Laura was understanding of my past, my fears, and my hopes. She didn't push me, but she was always there, offering support and encouragement. As winter turned to spring, our relationship blossomed. We started planning trips together, talking about the future. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of doubt, but we faced them together. Laura helped me see that life goes on, that it's possible to find happiness again after heartbreak. Claire was still a part of my life, though in a different way. We had to communicate about the finalization of our divorce and the division of our assets. It was hard, but I felt stronger, more capable of handling it. Laura's presence in my life made all the difference. She was a constant reminder that there is always hope, even in the darkest of times. By the time the divorce was finalized, I felt a sense of closure. Claire and I had gone our separate ways, but I no longer harbored anger or resentment. I had found my own path, my own sense of peace. With Laura by my side, I looked forward to the future with optimism and hope. As I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset with Laura, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been tough, but I had come out stronger. I had found new friendships, new passions, and a new love. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good, and for that, I was thankful.